Good day guys, I'm Mini War Painter. In this video I'm going to show you how I painted the stave to my Exalted Sorcerer, during which I'll show you my reapproach at how metallics could be painted to look enchanted. I'll catch you after the intro. Part 6. The Stave. So I'm going to begin by basing the long handle with Abaddon Black, followed by basing any gold details. I thought at first about painting the handle to appear as though it was made out of ivory, being another warm white to tie in with the loincloth. But after revising some ideas online, it occurred to me that it would look better if I painted it black, as I could risk the model being overpowered by the warm white, so a neutral black would be more appropriate. With those colours based, I move on to basing and highlighting the beads that are wrapped around the stave. I approach this by basing them with a 50-50 mix of Abaddon Black and Leadbelcher. Although these details could be easily achieved with a wash of Nuln Oil over some Leadbelcher, I weirdly enjoy mixing colours. It's not that I resent washes, because I'll be using them later on in this video, it's just quicker to base and highlight rather than base, wash then highlight. Moving on, I now use Ironbreaker to highlight these beads, being careful to apply the tiniest prick to each individual bead. With the beads completed, I now move on to the spearhead at the bottom of his stave and go to town with some blending. I begin at first with basing it with Leadbelcher, being super careful to not get any on his blue armour. This is followed by a 50-50 mix of Abaddon Black and Leadbelcher, and applied to the inner surface of the spear tucked close near the armoured foot. To help blend these two tones together, I painted where they meet with Leadbelcher, in the attempt to wet blend with the fresh 50-50 mix of Abaddon Black and Leadbelcher. This is then followed up by a 50-50 mix of Ironbreaker and Leadbelcher, applied further to the outside of the spearhead, leaving some of the Leadbelcher still showing in the middle. This is again wet blended using Leadbelcher. I then finish off the spearhead with an edge highlight using Ironbreaker, including a line down the centre to simulate the spearhead being folded down the middle. The next stage is to address the gold details with a recessed shade of Warplock Bronze. Using a 50-50 mix of Warplock Bronze and Retributor Armour, I now look to begin setting up contrasts on the gold by applying darker tones, which will later aid in making any highlights pop out that little bit further. Using Retributor Armour, I'll tidy up any areas of the gold where I may have gotten a little carried away when applying the recess shade, or to calm down any darker tones I applied during the previous step. With a 50-50 mix of Stormhost Silver and Retributor Armour, I'll now pick out my brighter transitions on the gold. At this point my patience with Stormhost Silver had worn thin, so I substituted it on my palette with Ironbreaker. It could be possible that the Stormhost Silver I have is a little old for any good use, but regardless I think I'll find another brand of bright silver, because the Ironbreaker I'm using is 3 times older and the paint is far more consistent in the ability to apply to the model. Going back to my mix of Warplock Bronze and Retributor Armour, I'm just touching up the darker reflections with the intentions of reinforcing their tones. To finish the gold off, I apply a couple of spot highlights of Ironbreaker. With the gold complete, I now move on to painting his metal blade, starting off with a base coat of Leadbelcher. With Nuln Oil, I'll wash the recesses of the rectangle decorations running along the blade, as well as the small scarab glyphs on the ends. I begin by painting a thin layer of 50-50 mix of Ironbreaker and Leadbelcher. This is then followed by another thin layer of pure Ironbreaker. To help make these highlights more highlighty, I gradually add Abaddon Black to the Leadbelcher, applying it in the other direction of the blade, adding more and more Abaddon Black to the mixture the further I come down the blade. I then use the same mixture to the sides of the blade to show definition between the sharpy bits of the blade and the flatty bits of the blade. With the metals complete, it's time for that glaze of purple. Only this time, as promised, I'm going to apply it using Xereus Purple, if that's how it's pronounced, and not Druchii Violet. The point in this is to see if we can get the enchanted effect we're after without matting down the area excessively that Citadel washers have proven to do. To achieve this glaze, I've heavily diluted the paint with water, and after loading some onto my brush, I use a paper towel to remove any excess before applying it to the model. Done correctly, and the glaze should tint the metallic surface subtly, giving it a purple enchanted sheen. Voila! I'm convinced this was a better result than using Druchii Violet to glaze with, but before we can truly celebrate, we need to paint in those tiny yellow stripes along the blade. I do this with a base of Averlund Sunset, followed by a layer of Yriel Yellow. Painting yellow this way helps to provide a good foundation for your Yriel Yellow in order for it to dry with a vibrant finish you want. To finish the yellow details off, I highlight the top edge of each stripe with Pallid Witch Flesh. To finish the blade off, I paint every other stripe with Ironbreaker. Last thing to highlight now is the black section of the stave. For this, I paint thin layers of a 50-50 mix of Abaddon Black and Eshin Grey. With this subtle highlight, I was looking to achieve that matte polish effect. A bit contradicting, but I'm sure you get what I mean. done. Thanks for watching guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you've anything to add, please don't hesitate to comment down below. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at miniwar_painter. Here you can follow my progression as I like to post regularly on my stories. Don't forget to subscribe and don't be shy to mix those paints. Ta-ra!